Then let's navigate to user slice. First of all, let's import the custom fetch. So since this is a default export, of course, it doesn't really matter how we call it here. And then instead of this silly stringify, why don't we set up the whole thing where I'm going to say try catch. And since this is already async, we can use await. Let's set it equal to response, and then let's say await, then custom fetch. Then what is the method name? This is very, very important because again, if you use the wrong method with the right URL, it's still not going to work. That's something that I really want to stress. So we need to pass in post, correct? It's a post request. Then what is the complete path? It is auth and then testing register. Eventually it's going to be registered, but for now, testing register. That's the path. And then remember, we do need to pass in what? We do need to pass in the user because that is what the server is looking for. Again, let's go back here and notice it's a post request. This is the complete URL. And then we have the object with these properties. Well, this is what the server is looking for. If the server is not going to get these values, we will get back error. It's as simple as that. Is it the end of the world? No, but the user won't be able to register. So let's pass in here the user, and don't worry, we'll test out with the error, or basically we'll omit this value. And then when it comes to Axios, the response is going to be in the error and then a response. And then I also want to log the actual response just so you can see what we're getting back. So let's save, and I'm going to navigate to the big browser window. I'm in the register. I mean, kind of obvious since we have the form here. Don't know why I showed the route. And let me go with a register. And remember that we already have the check for the alert. So it's empty values. We'll have that check. So therefore, we'll definitely have to provide something. We're going to go here with John. Then we're looking for some kind of email. Again, in my case, it's going to be this one. And then I want to provide the value. And then if everything is correct, we should get back the dummy data. What I mean by that, it's going to be the user with testing data, but the structure is going to be exactly the same. And check it out. If I take a look at the data, so the data property where the values are going to be sitting with Axios, I have the location, which by the way gets added right from the default. So I know we didn't provide this. And that's something that we'll talk about later when we modify the user in the profile. Then we also get the testing token. Again, eventually this is going to be proper JSON web token. And we get this user object. So whatever values I passed over here, you'll notice them in the user. In here I have email, last name, location, and name. And once we perform a proper request to a register route, so not testing register, but register route, we will save this user in our slice. Basically, we'll set up the extra reducers and we'll say, if we're successful, this is what we want to save. Now, if this is not going to be the case, then of course there's going to be an error. So let's try that, where I'm going to quickly navigate back to user slice, and let's remove this user. So let's say that we're just performing a post request without passing in the user that is coming from register. So let's just try this one out. Now, I still need to provide all of the values here. So let me say here, John, or I'm sorry, that's the name, my bad. So we're going to go over John, then email. And remember, I do need to provide them. Otherwise, I mean, I'll have that alert anyway, so it doesn't matter. I won't be able to send the request. And then also, let's set up that password here. So let's try to set this one up. Let's send it. And now notice we have 400. So that's an error. And this is coming from the server. It's very clear. It's coming from the server. And then if we take a look at the error response, we have this data and then message and JSON. And eventually what we'll do in the extra reducers, we'll take this message and we'll pass it in. How it's going to look like. First, I'm going to set it here in the register user directly, but again, we will eventually do that in the extra reducers. So let's say here toast, then we'll go with dot. Let's pass in the error. And now I want to pass in error dot response. dot data and then message. And this is what we're going to be passing in. Now, how do I know that the error is always going to be there? Because I set up the API. It's as simple as that. Of course, if you're working with some external API, you will need to check where the error message or the success is located. So that's not something that you can apply to all of the projects. Yes, the data, if it's successful, is going to be in the data property with Axios. But again, I know this one because I set up the actual API. So now let's try it out one more time with the register. Now let's go here with John. Okay, one more time. Let's add this value. Then the password. Then let's save and check it out. Now this one is coming already from the server. So if there's going to be some kind of message, we will nicely display it. So hopefully this is clear. If we set up proper method, in our case post, if we provide all of the values, in our case that is a user object, that's what the server is looking for, then we'll get back proper response. Basically, then we will get our user object with the token. Now, if it's not correct, then it will get back the error. So now, of course, we need to set up proper URL. This is just for testing. Of course, we want to go with proper URL, which is the register one. And then we also want to set up those extra reducers, because if we're successful, then we want to set up the user in our initial state equal to whatever we're getting back from the server. So the user object with the token and all that cool stuff, which will eventually allow the user to access the data from the server, the jobs data.